Hey y'all, welcome to this episode of Vern's Misadventures. In today's episode, I'm going to be working on updating my Hackintosh to the latest version of macOS, which is macOS Catalina. And we'll spin the camera around and we'll go through it all. Yeah, I'll go ahead and introduce y'all to the background modulation there might be in the video. Hopefully not. So we got one over here, that's Minnie. She's our little Shih Tzu. And when she misbehaves, she's a little Shih Tzu, huh? And then, Ginger over here. Ginger, come over here. There she is. Ginger is my little Doxy. She's a miniature dachshund. And she's coming up on her second birthday in July. And I got her in September. So anyway, if you hear any noise in the background, that's probably where it'll be coming from. One of them two or both. So at any rate, let's get into the video, shall we? This is my Hackintosh. We built this a few years back. It's a i7 6700K with a gigabyte board and two XFX RX 580s. It has OpenSUSE, CentOS, Arch, and it has Ubuntu as far as Linux goes. It has Windows 10 and it has macOS Mojave. So I put macOS Mojave on when I did the video card swap because macOS Mojave natively supports the RX 580s, and the same is true with Catalina. So I'm not expecting too much drama there. Let's go through this here. I'll show you a couple things I want to do. Now I've got to catch the boot screen. So this machine's got 32 gigabytes of RAM, so it takes a second to self-test itself. If we choose this P4 on the UEF iOS right here, we should get our Mac bootloader, which is Clover. So that's a little weird. Been getting those messages here of late. And then from here we'll say boot from macOS Mojave, which is the default, so that's fine. So we're booting from the main macOS drive. The way I've got the computer configured is it's got one 500 gig SSD that I use for macOS, and then I have a separate 500 gig SSD that I use for macOS backup. I have a separate one for Windows, that's 500 gigs, and a fourth 500 gig SSD. Now these are all Samsung Evo 850s, I think. But I have a fourth one which I put my Linux OSs on. Get signed in. Because I'll have a bootable copy, maybe a fresh install would be the hot setup. And then I'll have the macOS Mojave on the other drive, the backup, as a possible fallback to the launcher or the launch pad. And I'll start typing Carbon. Oops. And this is Carbon Copy Cloner. Now this software was not provided gratis. It was provided as a paid-for piece of software, but it's important to have this in a Hackintosh because you never know when you're going to install an update that's going to break your system, or really anything you might do. Because if you're like me, you wanted this to begin with as something you could experiment with, learn from, familiarize yourself with the operating system to make yourself a little more versatile and a little more valuable as possible employee, or even for your own use. So you want to check your source, which would be Mojave. Then you want to check your destination, which of course is my Mojave backup. We'll go ahead and close this. So the next thing we got to do is we got to consult Tony Mac. Computers, Hackintosh. I'm going to go to Tony Mac. So with Tony Mac, they have some rules on this site. One is they're totally against software piracy. And their philosophy is simply that if you can get a copy of macOS, whatever version you're talking about, from the Mac store, their philosophy is that you can legitimately download it and you have a legal copy of the software. The EULA, the User License Agreement, now that there, within that it says that you're only going to use the software on genuine Apple hardware. So you would not be guilty of piracy in the way they explain it if you get your software legitimately. So, as I've shown in some of my other videos, we do have a MacBook Air. And that through the MacBook Air, I was able to get access to the Mac App Store. And the Mac App Store, within there, you can get even copies of the operating system. So that's the good part about that. Whether or not this holds up in court, I couldn't tell you. I'm not a lawyer, man. But that's where I'm at. So I got me a legal copy of the OS that I'm running on this machine, even though I have technically violated the user agreement by putting it on non-Apple hardware. So you got to figure out for yourself how much that bothers you. So what I have here, so what I have here is I got my little SanDisk installation flash drive, and on here I have a bootable copy of macOS Mojave. So it's green, like a green apple. What we could do is we could create bootable media and do a clean install of Catalina on the backup. Let's see here. Multi-piece has been updated to version 12.3. Multi-piece is an all-in-one post-installation utilities on it. Also featured. So if we do Multi-Beast right here, so if we get the latest version of Multi-Beast, so this is the Mac App Store I was talking about. Once you have a completely functional copy of Mac OS running, then you have access to the Mac App Store. Anything that just says get, you can just download for no charge, or just type Catalina. So there's Mac OS Catalina review. So it's got a rating of 3 out of 5 stars. People were having some issues, and that's why I had waited this long to get it. But we've had no problems whatsoever with it on the MacBook Air at this time. So I'm willing to give it a try. So I guess first thing we got to do is we got to download. Yeah, we'll go ahead and download macOS Catalina. Now we're not going to install it through here. So in order to upgrade this copy to macOS Catalina, we're going to need to update Clover first. But my thinking is that if I go ahead and set up a bootable drive, I won't need to mess with that because it should be already part of the Multi-Beast. We'll see. Let's just go ahead and get an install guide. That's the best place to start. Table of contents. Step 1, download macOS Catalina. Well, we're doing that. Step 2, create a bootable USB with Unibeast. And then step 3, recommended BIOS settings. We already have those done. Install macOS Catalina, and then post installation with Multi-Beast. So there we go. So we're on step 2. We gotta get Unibeast. So with Unibeast, okay, so it says we're gonna do the erase operation and format as macOS extended journal. Erase, then you're done. You're going to download and run Unibeast. So this is Unibeast. And save it. It's going to go in our downloads. I'm fine with that. Okay. Well, that's downloading. I guess we can go ahead and get our flash drive ready. Just put our flash drive in right up here. Let's see, we'll minimize this. We'll come out of full screen first and then minimize. We're still downloading the Catalina. We've got 1/8 of it already. So let's see, we can go to our tool. We go to here, and we just do disk. We get the disk utility. So let's see here. Install macOS Mojave. Click erase. macOS extended journal. Yes. And we can change this. They say to change it to make it USB. So we'll just follow the directions and we can change it later. So USB, and then we'll erase. Let's see, we'll show the details. Didn't seem to work. Oh, here we go. processing, operation successful. Okay, done. So now if we look at our USB, show that we have 38 megabytes used to create the file system, and then the rest is free. We have 15.28 gigs left on this flash drive. With that, we should be able to close. Let's go back to the directions to see what our next step is. So we've done that. We did erase, type USB, blah blah blah. Alright, okay, done. Downloading and running Unibeast. But we have to finish downloading Catalina first. Okay, so I'm just going to let that do its thing for a little bit. We're pretty much where we can't. Well, we do have one other thing we could do. And we could go ahead and skip ahead and get the latest version of MultiBeast. So drag MultiBeast to your completed USB drive. So we'll open that in a new tab. There we go. There's something we could be doing while it downloads. And so we get MultiBeast, the latest version of that. We download that. And we save the file. And we save. Looks like it's still downloading MultiBeast, which is fine. Okay, so here we are. We are in macOS Mojave, and let's show you what we got going here. So we have our USB up here as a mounted volume showing up on the desktop right here. And if we look in our downloads folder, which opened up on the wrong screen, so look here in the downloads, we see that we have our MultiBeast and we have our Unibeast. So let's get those extracted. Okay, so there's Unibeast. We'll just drop them on the desktop for now. And then let's see, MultiBeast, same story. Okay. So we got those ready to go for us, and then we can just close our downloads folder. So there is something that's very important here, and it's a step, quite honestly, that I missed on the first try of this. It wasn't until I finally resorted to making my bootable USB with the MacBook Air that I actually read the directions. So anyway, I had a big issue of it basically going into a kernel panic every time I tried to boot my USB drive. I'm not going to show all that hassle in the movie because, you know, nobody needs to see all that. But let me show you here something very important that I missed. So you want to download macOS Catalina, right? And you got to use one of these machines here, right? Well, as far as the Apple OS is concerned on this machine here, it thinks it's a late 2013 27-inch iMac. But you saw, I showed you the machine at the beginning of the video, right? So anyway, and you'll see here that the iMac 2012 or newer is all you need. So this should work with this machine. So I don't think it's just that it's a Hackintosh that caused us to fail. Now here's what we did differently on the MacBook Air. Is I actually read this part through because I'd failed so many times. I wanted to make sure. And it says right here, take a deep breath and take your time. This is pretty simple, but it's easy to miss things if you rush. Follow each step to the letter. If you're using a Mac running macOS Catalina that has system integrity protection. Now, I read somewhere else that also applies to macOS Mojave and even macOS Sierra. So, you know, word to the wise. Well, anyway, we need to go into our recovery partition and run this code in a terminal, csrutil disable. And I'll go through and show you how that we're going to do that. Of course, to do that, we're going to have to reboot the computer. But I wanted to make sure that you saw that before we get going on the next step. Now, if you skip that, you just end up with an unbootable flash drive that just goes into a kernel panic. So let's try it on the Hackintosh here and see if it actually works out. Let me reboot the computer. All right, so we'll start by just go ahead and do the restart. I'll catch F12 on the splash screen. For now, we're going to go ahead and click into our P4, which is our Mojave drive. So let's go ahead and click. Alright, so on a real Mac, at this point you would have to press Command and R for the recovery. But on Hackintosh or any other, even with a Mac, if you run more than one operating system and you've installed Clover, you can just go to the recovery selection here in the Clover menu. So let's just go ahead and go into our recovery. Now going into recovery on Catalina, I noticed that this screen's turned gray and the actual progress happened on the television, which is over here on the wall. So if it comes to that, we will swing around and look at the TV. But for now, we'll just stare at these screens. Sure enough. Sure enough. So, as you see here on the TV, got the progress bar going in. Let me get the legs down on the tripod where we can actually see. Oh well, we tried to catch it, but it just booted into what you see here. The window, yeah, see where it says utilities there on the top bar. Now you want to do that. You don't want to mess with this one here, the disk utility. You don't want that. You want up here at the top of the screen where it says utilities. We're going to click there and we're going to select terminal. Alright, so we got our terminal here. We're just going to type one simple command, and that is csrutil and then disable. So we did that, and then we just press enter. And then it says successfully disabled system integrity protection, SIP. Okay. So that tells me right there, if it successfully disabled it, it definitely was running on macOS Mojave. So, yeah, there's a little lesson learned, huh? Please restart the machine for the changes to take effect. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to close this terminal and press restart. I've actually got to shut down, make sure I get a clean boot. Alright, let's turn this thing on. Pitch the F12, edit, select number 4, so UEFI-OS P4. And then over here we just select to go into macOS Mojave. Alright, we'll get logged in and then we'll pick it up on the screen recorder from there. Alright, so now that we have our system integrity protection disabled, at least temporarily, we can go ahead and open up our Unibeast. Oh, I don't think I showed this before. Let me show you this. We have our Catalina downloaded too. So let's CIT. So there's install macOS Catalina right there. Okay. Click away from that. So once it's installed, you don't really have to do anything with it. It just has to be on your computer and Unibeast will find it. So let's open up, let's go ahead and start Unibeast. Now it says Unibeast is an app downloaded from the internet. Are you sure you want to open it? You just click open and then continue and then continue and then it's talking about Clover. And it's talking about Unibeast tool, right? This is the license for Unibeast. You have to agree to the license. Alright, so here you're going to select which destination you're going to use, and you just click on your USB, right? So this particular one was a 16 gigabyte flash drive. I don't recommend using anything smaller than this. You may, and I say may, get away with a 12, but I'm not sure. I would say 16 for sure. I mean, the OS alone is 8 gigabytes plus, so you get a 16 gigabyte, you'll be good to go for a few releases, I would think. Alright, then we'll click continue. Hover over an icon. So we click on our Catalina. This is what we're going to want to install for the OS. Continue. Now, over here we want UEFI boot mode. Continue. And then I have AMD graphics cards, so I'm going to inject ATI. Don't worry about what it says here about your early cars or whatever. Just go ahead and inject your ATI if you're running RX 570s, 580s, things of that nature. So with that, we click continue. So this is a quick creation summary. So we're going to put it on the USB, we're going to install Catalina, we're going to use UEFI boot mode, and we're going to inject ATI for our Radeon graphics cards. So we will continue. Just put in your password. Okay, alright, so this is going to take, it says 10 minutes. Yeah, that's a joke. It takes a while. So we're just going to let this cook a while, and I'll come back and we'll talk about it a little bit before we restart and try to boot into this thing, okay? We're going to have one more step we got to do before we do that though, so we'll cover that when we get back. Well, look at here, it says we're done. Not sure exactly how long it took, but it took longer than 10 minutes. So we click on the quit button here. So we see that our drive that used to say USB is now called install MacOS Catalina. So then you go over here and you go over here to the USB drive after you open it up, and you got to install the multi-beast. Remember we extracted that, put it on the desktop. So you just take that whole folder and you can just drop it over here. I'll show you what's in the folder after it gets moved. It's not a big deal. So yeah, you got your multi-beast app, and you have some features, and you have some a change log. So we could have just put the app, it wouldn't have, but it's okay. It won't hurt anything to have that too. With that, we close this out and we are ready to try to boot into the flash drive. So let's see if we successfully created a bootable flash drive or not. Off we go to the camera. Alright, here we go. Ready? We're going to restart. I'm ready to get on that F12 button as soon as I see the splash screen. Here we go, we're on the F12. Look at here, Clover start boot EFI at install macOS Catalina on the SanDisk. So that's what we want. Let's see what happens with it. Alright, we'll come over here to something where it says external boot macOS install from install macOS Catalina. When we tried to do this without the system integrity protection disabled, we'd get so far and then it would fail. Well, let's see how far we get with this. Oh, gray screen. Yep, it's on the TV. Oh, shoot. So, if you look here, it actually says it's similar to the macOS recovery, but we definitely booted from the flash drive. So, you're looking here, you see, so if we were going to install this right now, which we are not, we would simply choose our disk utility, continue, right, and then over here on the left side, we would choose whichever one we were going to install on. So let's say if we were going to do it on the Mojave, and then we would click on erase, right there. And then we would choose our file system, erase, and then we would choose the file system we want, which would be the APFS, and then we would click erase. Once all that was done, we would close the utility and we would just click on install macOS, just like that. So obviously I'll try to go through later on and use the footage that I already had from the real installation, but I wanted to show you the steps. And then if I can find, if it's not too garbled and from all the mistakes and everything, I'll go ahead and show it that way. But this way at least you get the idea of the steps necessary to do. Let the installer finish and be good to go. With that, I'm going to restart the computer. Well, y'all, I guess that's going to do it for this episode. We got our installation media created, and we tested it to make sure it's actually going to work. So in the next episode, we will film how we got this macOS Catalina installed. So the dogs are going nuts. Anyway, if you haven't subscribed, I'd like to invite you to do so. And if you're already a subscriber, I want to thank you for hanging around. So until the next one, y'all take care.